Good morning and welcome to the VSA Morning Miner. It's Friday, the 13th of January. I'm joined by Paul Rankin. Paul, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you. And the sun is shining. Good to see, but it doesn't look like it'll last through tomorrow.
No. Okay, let's get into the mining news, which is looking quite varied this morning. Let's start with production figures from Griffin Mining.
Yes, that's right. Griffin being the AIM-quoted zinc producer actually within China. Q4 and full year production results there. They were impacted this past year due to the mandatory government-imposed COVID lockdowns during the year, as well as the mine's own proximity to Beijing and therefore restrictions on movements of supplies to the mine during the Winter Olympics and during the Party Congress convention that was held last year. So their output overall with metals volumes was down about 12% on the year, though they did have somewhat higher metal price averages. So when we see the financials, we should see some significant mitigation in that regard. And there was a monthly production record in December from the Kaijiing zinc mine, and it allowed them to proceed or exceed their production guidance for the quarter. So we'll see what they might be able to do going into the next couple of quarters to see whether they can sustain that rate of mining and development on zones 2 and 3, which are the real volume bodies in the mine here, because they want to get production throughput to 1.5 million tons for this year.
Yeah, but without, with the about turn on zero COVID and no Communist Party conference this year, there should be fewer interruptions to production for the year ahead. Although there are other events and conferences in Beijing where the government can decide to put in similar restrictions on industry. I don't know if there's any plan like that this year. But it should be far less interrupted than last year.
Yes, that's right.
Caledonia has also come out with Q4 full year production numbers.
It's now official for Caledonia Mining. They have reached the production milestone that they had set 5 years ago and have produced over 80,000 ounces from the Blanket mine in Zimbabwe. And that's above the top end of their guidance that they had when they first made the decision in order to put in the new deep shaft at Blanket. Production was a 19.7% increase on last year's 67,500 ounces, and the quarterly production was up by 13% to 21,000 ounces here on a year-on-year basis. For 2023, they expect also at least 12,500 ounces from the newly acquired Bilboes project outside of Bulawayo to the north, which will add to the output, which they're being conservative on Blanket with guidance to be slightly lower than 80,000 ounces at this time, but should get them toward the 100,000 ounces total production for 2023. And they expect mine costs for the combined entity under $1,000 an ounce and all-in sustaining cost under $1,250 an ounce.
Yeah, that new guidance shows they've really hit the top end of what can be achieved at Blanket for next year, hence the decision to acquire a new asset, I guess. Bit more capital spending next year. I think $21 and a bit million planned in total across the two assets. So having made the acquisition the second half of last year, took them down to about $6 million of cash at the end of the third quarter, they've highlighted that capex will be funded from a combination of cash flow and local bank debt.
Mm-hmm.
One we haven't talked about before, I don't think, Paul, Vanstar.
Yes, Vanstar TSX listed has a joint venture with IM Gold Corp, where Vanstar holds 25%, IM Gold 75% on a gold project called Nelligan, and it lies 60 kilometers southwest of Chibougamau in Quebec. Key point here is a new resource estimate out on the Nelligan deposit has grown it by 63% to 72 million tons indicated, 0.85 grams gold per ton. So that's 2 million ounces indicated, 114 million tons inferred, also a similar grade. So that adds 3.25 million ounces. And the major increase leads them totally over 5 million ounces, and that would join then the plus 5 million ounce Osisko Mining's Windfall deposit, also down in the same area between Val-d'Or and Chibougamau in the Abitibi Greenstone Belt.
Yeah, interesting stuff. There was another announcement yesterday in Europe. Sweden's LKAB announced the discovery of completion of resource on a 1 million ton rare earth oxide deposit, which would be the largest in Europe. I think what's interesting there is that they said they could get into production in 10 to 15 years, but 5 if permitting was sped up. I think that neatly sums up the challenges of trying to develop mining projects in Europe.
Yes, I would agree with that. And 10 to 15 years being such a long timeline, the question then becomes, are the fundamentals of the rare earth market itself in 10 to 15 years' time such that the mine would actually be needed by then, particularly if the European focus more so than any other region of the world is on building scale and recycling. So we'll see.
And then on the back of Saudi Arabia's Future Minerals conference, 2 announcements of JVs, one with Barrick, between Ma'aden and Barrick, to explore in the Gulf, and a more wide-ranging JV with Ivanhoe Electric and Ma'aden to explore for metals for the energy transition. So some tangible results from that first conference.
Yes, and they also was an announcement out too that the Saudi government had made a commitment of an initial roughly $3 billion toward a new mining fund as well to go internationally to take minority interests in major projects around the world to diversify the revenues that would report to the state itself. Ultimately, they thought it could get as large as $100 billion fund. So we'll see what kind of success they have with their early investments.
Yeah, all becoming very significant. Okay, Paul, we'll call it a day there, and we'll be back next week. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Very good. See you then.